Okay, looks like we're live now. Okay, so this is our last learning teaching interaction. And we're doing for the outline for weeks 7 through 9. Sorry, my voice is a little bit hoarse today, but I'll go ahead and get started. I just did it. I do my outline basically by the chapter. And so like I have a section on evaluation and a section on ethics. And so I'll start on evaluation. That was the one we did week 7. And something that kind of popped out to me was it was talking about how, you know, you're trying to reach your goals. That's what your evaluation is, you know, deciding whether or not you had reached your goals. And kind of just something that popped out was you can't reach your goals if you don't already have them set. So like you have to know beforehand, before you do your workshop, before you even write up your workshop, like what do I want to do here? What do I want these people to learn or understand or whatever? And I thought that's just kind of a good thing in life. You know, if you just wander around just getting through life, you're never going to reach your goals. But if you can set your goals and then look back and see if you reached them, then that's how you kind of move forward and be successful.
Good. One of the things that stood out to me in that evaluation chapter was the different types of evaluations. For mine, I developed an assessment tool that is just a survey, basically a questionnaire that I will give all the participants. But in the chapter, it said one way that you can get really, really valuable feedback is by doing an interview, interviewing people. I don't particularly want to interview all the participants. So one thing that I'm going to do is I've invited a friend to go with me and kind of just be there to help me if I need help, setting up little activities or whatever. She's just kind of going to be there with me to help me if I need it. And I thought I would like her to be there so that I can interview her afterward. And I thought, just to ask her, okay, so you were not a participant in this, but you were here the whole time. Here's the outline of my thing. Which parts did you find the most helpful? Were there any parts that were dragging to you? Was there anything that you thought was not as effective? What was your, and my questionnaire has questions, some open-ended questions like, what was your favorite activity? What was your least favorite activity? But I think just being able to have a conversation with somebody and ask follow-up questions will be really helpful. And I don't know, maybe I'll decide to interview at least one of the participants as well.
That's what I was going to ask you, because that caught my attention too. And I'm really hoping, because you and I are both doing teens, I'm really hoping to be able to glean a little bit of information. I'm hoping that I come across well enough that they like me. Yeah. And that, because I'm going to do a refreshment, and I'm hoping that's kind of a mingling time. And I hope I can say, and I think I put this at the end of mine, so what did you think? Did you have any thoughts? I'm hoping to have some conversation with some of the participants to add to mine. It won't be in written form. It'll just be what I glean, because I did a very simple assessment tool just because they're teens and they don't really want to do that.
Right.
But, I'm hoping to get that. I like that idea too of inviting somebody, because I thought about, because I'm a Boys and Girls Club, of the people that run the program for teens, of asking them also. But I really want to know what, in a conversation style, what the teens think.
Yes.
You never know how teens are going to reply. But I'm hoping to build a relationship enough that they're honest with me and let me know, like I did some practicing on my grandsons. They're 10 and 11, and I got some really good feedback. And one of them was, I already knew that.
Really?
Yeah, I already knew that, because in my class, they told us about this and that. And I said, okay, that's good to know. Or they said, oh, I didn't know what that meant. And so that was really helpful for me to say, okay, maybe don't spend too much time on this, although they're in a different state, but still it gave me some good thought process. So
that's great.
I like that too.
I struggled a lot with this section because, well, and even our assignment for our portfolio, I hate surveys. Like I am like totally never do surveys. If it's an option, I absolutely do not do it. Never, never. Even if it was a great experience or horrible experience, I just hate surveys.
You don't take the time.
I was like, I like the interview idea. I might do that too. I might, you know, because we have refreshments at the end of ours too. And I might just kind of chit chat with some people and be like, hey, what was your favorite part?
Good feedback that way. So what kind of tool did you guys do the same one?
And ours is just, it sounds kind of similar to yours. We have like a set of questions and then like 1 through 10. So they'll circle it. They'll be like, right, I found this information pertinent to my situation, and then they'll rate it 1 through 10.
Okay. So. Yeah. I also liked what you said, and I wrote that down initially because when they were talking about a vision, you know, and it's become so true. You read this and then you're doing it. If you don't know what you want to measure and you don't know what your goals are or you want your outcomes to be, you know, you really can't even begin, right? Mm-hmm. So it was interesting for me to know what did I want to have happen. We use that a lot in the church when we serve, you know, what was my goal? So I thought that was really helpful too.
Later.
Sorry, I love your mingling idea at the end, Kay. I think I will do that because we're having pizza at the end. And so maybe I can just say, hey, you know, tell me.
What did you think? You know, what did you think about this part? Maybe instead of that open, you know, with teams, sometimes you just can't say what you think. Oh, it was good.
Right.
What did you think about when we did this? Or, you know, you have to give them some more specific. You have to ask. So we learned about asking those questions that elicit responses, right?
Yeah.
So I hope that works. I'm counting on that to give me some good feedback. So.
Later in that same chapter, so back to evaluation, I thought there was cool. So do you guys remember the response shift bias? So basically it was the idea that like if you have a survey or you evaluation beforehand and then an evaluation afterwards, and the evaluation afterwards shows that they actually know less.
Oh yeah.
But it was because they've learned more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so then they're aware of the depth that they still have to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm explaining that very good.
They figured out how much they didn't know, basically.
Yeah. Well, that's what I feel like. That is like how church is, right? Every time I go to church, I'm like, you know, they'll be talking about, I don't even know, prayer, scripture study, anything, any concept that we talk about, subject that we talk about in church. And you're like, I'm doing pretty good at that. I'm doing good at family home evening. I hold it every week. You know, my kids, da-da-da-da. And then you take a lesson on it and you're like, oh man, I still have a long way to go. Like, I'm not doing this and I'd be doing this better and da-da-da. And I thought that sure happens a lot with the gospel. I think the more you understand about the gospel, the more you realize how much further you have to go.
No, exactly.
So.
Are you doing one? Are you doing a pre-evaluation type of thing?
No.
Well, I'm not either.
Does somebody else want to do ethics?
I have comments on ethics.
Okay.
And kind of a question, actually. So because my workshop is on healthy teen relationships and specifically teen dating, there are brushes with things about sexuality. And of course, from an ethical standpoint, especially since I'm meeting with members of the church, I'm still not going to say, hey, well, we don't believe in da-da-da-da. I'm not even going to put anything out there that makes a moral judgment at all. I'm presenting the research. However, I wondered what you guys would think about this as far as ethics. So I'm kind of focusing on the development of healthy relationships. And one of the definitions that I've come across in my research is that dating relationships in high school, romantic relationships are a normal and important part of adolescent development. But it also says so is sexual experimentation.
Yeah.
And I just did not even touch that. I'm not touching it at all. I just kind of ignored it. And I'm wondering, you know, I guess I'm not obligated to share every bit of the research. So it's not like I'm withholding important stuff per se. I just don't even want to go there. I don't want it to be about sex. I don't want it to be about I'm very briefly touching on just make sure that you know what your boundaries are and that you maintain those. I'm not making any kind of judgment, but what do you guys think as far as ethics goes? Is that, am I ethically required to say, you know, learning kissing and holding hands and stuff like that is kind of a part of normal development for adolescents? It's not necessarily saying sex itself. You know, it is talking about, it says no matter what the level of sexual activity, it is part of normal, healthy adolescent development. So do you think I've taken the right stance on this?
Well, I've got two comments on that. The first comment is not necessarily on ethics, but just in general, I think research, science, anything like that, it's not 100%. You know, things change. There's research. I don't even know how many years ago, 20 years ago. I've been reading about allergies and stuff because my nephew is like super allergic to peanuts and stuff. So like 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, they were saying you need to keep your kid, according to research, you need to keep your kid away from peanuts and soy and all this and eggs for a long time until they're at least 1 or 2 or 3. And then that will help their immune system build up, and then they won't be allergic to that stuff. And then we've seen over the past 10, 15 years, this super hyperinflation of kids who are allergic to all of these things. And so now they're coming out with this new research that says, actually, that research was wrong research. Yeah. The new research we have says actually opposite. You should be introducing it to them when they're younger, because then their body doesn't see it as something it needs to fight. It's, you know, it recognizes it. So anyway, so that's my first comment is research isn't 100%. So if you're not confident in the research that you're reading, I wouldn't share it just for personal reasons. But my other thing I was going to say, as far as ethics go, as far as that chapter was, so one of the virtue ethics, if you remember the 3 virtue ethics were caring, prudence, and hope. And I think prudence kind of comes into play here, where it's like, you know, even if somebody came up like and had a question about that, and they're like, well, what do you think about sexuality? How far is okay to go at what age or whatever? You can just say, you know what? I know where my limits are. I'm not experienced or knowledgeable enough or whatever to give you that information. And so you know how far you can go with the information that you have.
I really like that, the prudence, because, you know, some kids, all they need is to hear you say that sexual, you know, experimentation or sexual activity is a normal part of adolescent development, to say, I just got permission, it's in the research, you know what I mean? So I think that, I think it's prudent to just ignore it like I am. So besides the very basic boundaries of knowing your own personal boundaries. So. Yeah.
And I say, my thing, because we're both teaching teens, you know, you don't, and this was it talked about an ethical dilemma, and mine is not going to be near what yours is because it's on social media, but I'm sure there's going to be some that say, well, my parents said it's okay if I do sexting, or my parents said that it's okay if I do this, and now you're telling me, and I tried really hard not to say this is, I tried to say, this is what this is, and this is what the research shows. So now you need to look at it and make a responsible decision. That's what I felt like my role is.
Yes.
And I struggled with finding positives to social media because personally, I don't see a whole lot, but there are some. But I remember going through the research and being able to say, okay, it says, because it said about identity and social media, that's a great way to experiment with your identity. And I can see where that could be taken to a place where I'm not comfortable with. But I still tried to have some information that said there are some good things about social media, because I found a lot of things that said that it can be a great way to communicate with friends. It can be a great way to stay in touch with family. And so there's some good things there. But my ethical dilemma was making sure that I educated to where they may be a parent that, you know, maybe their parents have said differently. But I wanted to be able to say, but this is the research, overwhelming research.
Yeah. And I think your workshop did a really good job without you having to take a moral stance on it. Your workshop did a really good job of saying, look, these are the dangers of it. You don't want to mess around with revenge porn. I mean, the last thing on earth you need is somebody broadcasting, stuff you shouldn't have sent in the first place.
Yeah. And I actually, as I've thought about it over the time, I mean, I'm still working. I mean, I've found a lot of benefit in working on it, setting it aside, and then going back to it, and then trying to run through it in my mind and mopping. And I've even felt to be stronger than what I was initially. I felt a little bit braver to be a little bit stronger, because the more I've read, you sent me a news article, I think. It's in the news so much.
Yeah.
And it's not a positive thing.
Right.
And so I don't know. But that was just my ethical dilemma, is just that in all of us, I guess, you could teach something that somewhere else, like allergy, somebody says, no, that's not what I read, or that's not what I experienced. I experienced this. And I mean, what if you taught about sexuality, church or non-church, and then you had a person that came back and said, well, this happened to me because I did this. I don't know. That was my ethical dilemma. But I always try and go back to the fact that I'm educating. I'm educating basis off of fact, hopefully. And you need to make a responsible decision.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm educating you. And I'll just add this other thing. The more I've done this, and I know this probably goes to our next thing, the more I've realized, and I didn't start out when I started school understanding this, that it's that family unit that is so important. I really wish I would have started with my parent workshop, because the more I think about things and the more I realize is that it's that, we talk about in the principles too, it's that family that needs to make that decision. Because I can talk to teens all day about social media and the dangers of it, but if they go home and they have a parent that doesn't care, doesn't do any intervention, it's like giving a kid a driver's license and never teaching them how to drive. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have any boundaries, doesn't have anything like that for their kids with social media, has no awareness. Then it is up to that adolescent to make those decisions. Hopefully some of them will on their own. But how much stronger do they do if they have a family that's helping them?
Yeah.
That's been a real thing for me. I mean, and we don't always see that. What's the dilemma? The dilemma so you have these families that are all broken apart, and they're not teaching their children because they're either working 5 jobs, or they're not there, they don't care, or they're split families. But then we know that children do better in a family structure. So what's the answer?
Yeah, and that totally goes into our next chapter, or, our reading for this week about the level of family involvement.
Right.
And actually, in one of my other classes, I've been doing a lot of reading of research studies. And one of the studies that I read, it said, we found that this education really motivated students to want to change in this area. They were motivated, but for whatever reason, they said, but they were motivated and they kind of tried, but it didn't take hold. And they put in their paper, we believe that it's because it wasn't implemented on a family level where the parents would support it, where the family would support it. And in the research that I'm doing for this workshop about teenagers, it's the family and the peers. That structure has to be supportive of, if you involve that structure somehow in what you're trying to teach, and have that family involvement and peer involvement, if possible, that would really help.
Yeah, I think peer involvement is big too. I can see peer involvement though, even in young mothers. I see that can be a big part of it too. Sorry, but that kind of goes with both of those. But
well, and I think I remember in the chapter, or I guess if it was an article this week, that it said that's like what family life education is for. It's for, like, the end goal of family life education is to help families to function better.
Right.
So, our workshops are like taking a little snippet and be, helping teens or helping you when you're a new mom or whatever. But in the end, it's trying to help families function better. That's our end goal.
Right.
So the question is, though, when we have workshops like this that are targeted specifically toward you guys, new mothers, us, toward teenagers, how does that mean that our stuff is not going to be as effective? I mean, it's kind of, you can't always teach the whole family. It's just
right. But that was my point. I felt like, okay, and that was what I started out doing. I want to teach the teens and I want to teach their parents. But that in society anymore, they're not always together, right? It's not there. So I always have in my mind, and I have my own experience, you know, sometimes we know that it works better with their families. We know that. But not everybody comes from a family that offers that to them. And so sometimes you can teach a teen something that they will grasp hold of and they will make a decision to make a change. That's kind of what I'm hoping, I guess, is that they kind of do some self-reflecting and think, maybe on my own, I need to make some changes in behavior of the way I use social media. And maybe that's what you're hoping too, you know?
Well, and I don't think, I mean, when you think about high school or college or anything, like your end goal is to become educated as a marriage and family studies person.
Right.
But along the way, you also learn religion and you also learn statistics and stuff like that. And it's not like, well, those don't really have anything to do with being a family and marriage studies person. It's like, no, but it kind of adds to it. It makes you more educated in general, which builds upon all these other things you're learning. And I think, I mean, especially with those teens, I mean, obviously it's important for the families to be supportive as well, but think of the support or the base that they're getting from you guys, because they still have their whole lives ahead of them. They're going to create their own family, and learning from what you guys are teaching them, maybe that will influence how they parent and how they interact with their kids when they grow up. So, I mean, that's an important one, because they're kind of in that transition period where they're at their family of origin, but they're going to be creating their own family in the next decade. And so it really is influential both ways.
I agree. And that's kind of what I talk about my own experience, because as a teen in my family, growing up and then observing my friends' families, I wanted a family like my friends had and not what I came from. My parents were great, just a little dysfunctional. And so it motivated me to have something different by watching my peers.
Yeah.
And that's what motivated me to want to have something a little bit different than what I came from. And so I know that can happen. So that was exactly the point I was trying to make. But yeah.
I was just going to add on to that. I feel like it's kind of like, as members getting your own testimony, like, I feel like that's a comparison of like, we grow up in the church leaning on our parents, but then there's a turning point of like, when do I have it for myself? And that's kind of like with you guys and the teens, that's kind of like the stage that you guys are going for, of like, it's your time to learn about your own ethics and your own decisions. Of things. And I feel like you guys have the opportunity to really pinpoint the better options in life, if that makes sense. Maybe persuade them a little bit more to do better things than rather other things. But I feel like in some of the readings, I can't remember which one it was, but it talked about like giving them the opportunity, like the intervention, like intervene, but like you still have to allow for them to learn and experience those things so that they can learn from their mistakes or whatever too.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Good point.
We kind of covered this week's stuff as well. I thought it was interesting. So when they were talking about family life education deals with the present and future, like I can't remember what the other ones were. One of them was like deals with the past, and then the other one deals with the past and the present, and then education does the present and the future.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of interesting. It made me think about some of the questions that we had in our lesson plan. There was some of them that Sister Buswell was like, be careful with this one. I don't know how that's going to come out. Might get some weird answers that you're not looking for. And I thought it was interesting. The questions that she was worried about and that we ended up deleting because we didn't want to have weird answers dealt with the past. They were things like, what did you feel you were uninformed on when you were pregnant or had a new mom, or when you were a new mom? And like, what were things that happened to you in the past? Whereas the questions that we still have in our lesson plan deal with the future. Like, what are some ways that you can stay connected with your family? And I thought that has to deal with what you're going to do in the future. And it's not going to bring up these like weird memories or traumatic experiences that these people went through that we're not really should deal with. And so I just thought that was interesting. That kind of worked perfect with the questions that the good and the bad questions that we had.
And it goes with the preventative intervention, because if you bring up something in the past, remember somewhere in that text it talked about family therapy was things in the past.
Right.
And family life education was the preventative, even though I did make note that it's not always that the problem hasn't occurred yet. For example, it's not only that one of the teens that I'm going to teach hasn't sent a sexting picture, right?
Right.
But it's still the future. So
yeah, what can you do in the future? We're not worrying about the past.
And
what can you do?
Yeah, I really like how you applied Sister Buswell's that specific example. That's really
well, it like finally clicked to me, because she was like, you got to be careful, and I was like, well, why is that one fine but this one's not? When I read that, I was like, that makes sense, because someone's going to be like this traumatic experience that happened to them in the past, and we're all going to be like,
and you're like,
okay, well, let's move on.
It's not productive in the setting we're in you can't do anything about the past. Why even? It's not productive, but it's productive to talk about what you can do right now and what you can do going forward. So what a cool, I like that reflection a lot of the material.
I like that too. That was really good.
Okay, well, I think we're at about 26 minutes. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add?
I have one question on the ethics, and I may have missed this. It talked about, and it's no big deal. It talked about the data privacy policy when you're talking about family life education. So what does that mean? Does that mean that there's a HIPAA or something? What is a data privacy policy? I mean, is it just not sharing? Is that part of the ethics? Is you don't share? You know, you talk in social work how you don't. So do we, as family life educators, do we not share things?
Well, say that phrase again that you're using. I remember reading it, but
it's in the principles.
Right.
And it talks about data privacy policies.
Data privacy policy.
I just took that to almost like stuff that you have with the doctor's office. They can't just share your personal information with anybody. Right. So your, sign up sheets, or there's nothing that we really, there's surveys, I guess, that you protect their anonymity, that you don't share their personal information, which why would we ever do it anyway? I don't know. Yeah. To me, I just kind of was like, oh yeah, I get what it's saying, but why would I share it anyway?
I thought it was just interesting in relation to the other, like a therapist, where you would have.
Well, I was just, when I read it, I think I just automatically thought like whoever you're working with, like if you're doing a workshop through the hospital, then you need to, use their data privacy policy. And if you're doing a workshop through, I don't know, WIC, Women and Children, whatever that one is, like you use their data private. I would assume a lot of those already have one in place.
So can we take?
So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Does that mean we can't take pictures? Do we have to get their permission to have a picture?
Good question.
Are you posting it somewhere? I don't know.
No, but didn't Sister Buswell say she wanted pictures? Oh, she wanted pictures of the setup.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think she just said of when we were setting up.
But I don't think, especially none of us are working with little children that, I wouldn't take that.
I wasn't really, and I'm not bringing it up to say I want to know the answer, but I thought it was interesting that that's in there, but most places where there's a privacy thing, it's kind of almost like a signed thing. And maybe that when you sign that thing, that's what it is. You're just saying you won't do that. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. And maybe the school always sends home stuff saying, hey, your child might be recorded or photographed, and you have to sign it saying you're okay with that.
Yeah.
But for adolescents, maybe it would just be a courtesy if you did want to take a picture with them that could possibly be shared somewhere. Yeah. Hey, are you guys okay with me taking this picture? Would you be okay if I put it on social media or shared it with my instructor or whatever? Yeah. I wouldn't think that we would need like a signed.
Yeah, just a question.
Consent.
I don't think I had anything else. I thought the reading this week though was really interesting and talking about the three aspects and maybe the overlap. Did you guys agree with how they said that they didn't agree, I guess, with the model, the original model being the hierarchy. I thought that was really fascinating, actually. I really liked about that.
So tell us what you're talking about.
So it talked about how who are they, Myers Walls, how they had a different concept, because so you have those, is it Daughtery? He had the five, is it 5 things? 3, 4, 5, yeah. The 5 areas, and it was kind of like a hierarchy of where family life education was and where family therapy would step in. It didn't have the case management in there. But then their thought was it wasn't really a hierarchy of needs. Well, they kind of picked it apart, basically.
Right.
I thought that was interesting to learn about how they viewed it. I kind of liked a lot of what they said, to be honest. And that was one of our questions. Did you agree or disagree with their concerns? I liked how they said that it wasn't like it was a hierarchy to where you worked through these and then you ended up here in family therapy. But then I also thought, one of my main thoughts was, as a family therapist, it talked about maybe you wouldn't have the ability or the education to educate. So I tried to think, I've never gone to therapy, but I know my son has gone to therapy. So when he went to therapy and they were doing the intervention based upon past things, was that guy also qualified to give him tools and instruction to be able to go to for future behavior? Or was that's what I got out of it. But I thought that was really interesting to kind of see where our place would be. But I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting look at it. It gave me a deeper education about it, basically. Yeah. But it could have been just me.
That's cool.
So that's all I have. It's a lot.
Me too.
I think that's probably good. I think that was a good discussion. We'll just maybe email each other early next week.
Okay.
About getting together as a group next week and talking about case management.
Sounds good.
Text, guys. I don't see my Gmail hardly ever. So maybe we can text if we're trying to set something up, just so I would hate to keep you waiting.
Okay. We'll do that. Let's text.
If anybody has stuff that you want me to look at, if you don't mind texting me to let me know as well, that would be awesome.
Sounds good. So did you guys all submit yours already? Your final? You did, didn't you, Sonia? You submitted your everything and all your PowerPoint and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did too, because mine is tomorrow, and everything has to be approved before you do your workshop.
She said, yeah. So did you get a grade back on it and everything, or no?
Yeah.
All the appendix stuff you don't get graded on.
Right.
But everything else does.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that still have a number of, like, it's just held at resubmit until you.
Yeah, to the very end. Right.
Yeah, I think is there 2 of them?
Yeah,
the
I think
assessment and one
other.
The
marketing, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm still there. It doesn't need to be recorded, but I went to help my daughter and her car broke down in the middle of nowhere, and I was with her, and we got stranded.
Oh,
so
no.
I got home late last night.
Oh.
So, anyway.
No fun.
I know, and I care for my mom, and she has Alzheimer's, and so it's like I have to, get babysitters for her when I'm gone.
Oh, wow.
Kay, you get huge props for me right now. My mother-in-law is out of town for 2 weeks, and I've been taking care of her mom. And I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard. it's a lot easier taking care of my 3- and 5-year-old than taking care of her mom.
It can be. I've had my mom for 10 years. So.
Oh wow! Yeah, you get huge props.
And it gets progressively worse. She's kind of had a slow boat, but it's been difficult lately. So.
Wow, hang in there, Kay. You've got a lot on your shoulders.
So I was gonna get mine in, and then I had to go help my daughter, and then her car broke down, and we were in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, I just flew home last night, and so I will get mine in today. But luckily, my son is really good with my mom, and he came and stayed at our house. So.
Oh, good. Well, good luck, Kay. Gosh.
Good luck, everybody. Good luck.
I know. I'm so excited for you.
We'll do our first one in the next week.
When you guys get done, just text saying how it go. I really want to know. Just put out a quick text on what you thought.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe if you guys don't mind saying a little prayer for me tonight, and I'll pray for you guys tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'm just really excited to see how you even felt just about the teaching experience personally from yourself, you know, how you felt and stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah,
cool.
send out a quick text. That'd be great.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.